He was just fixing a fence, but what he heard in the barn made his heart race. While hammering the boards, the Apache heard cries coming from the back of the property. Curious, he entered the barn, and what he found inside would change everything. A truth hidden from the entire village came to light. Subscribe to the channel and discover how a simple gesture revealed a touching secret. The fence surrounding the small farm on the outskirts of Bom Jesus do Gallo looked as crooked as the glances the townspeople cast upon Jurema. The wooden slats, worn by time and neglect, barely supported their own weight, much less prevented the few remaining animals from escaping to neighboring lands. The empty pig pen, the silent henhouse, and the barn with its partially destroyed roof told the story of abandonment that had settled in that corner of the Minas Gerais countryside. Jurema carried on her broad shoulders the weight of comments, whispered in shops, at church doors, in health clinic lines. Widowed from Zé Benedito for almost 2 years, her voluminous body was the subject of cruel jokes among those who had nothing to offer but sharp tongues. Sister, that one just keeps getting bigger. Seems like sadness turns to fat on her, they would say. Must be laziness. She doesn't even have a decent vegetable garden anymore. Jurema listened to the comments as one listens to the wind, inevitable, constant, capable of knocking down what was already fragile. After weeks of intense rain, typical of that scorching January, part of the barn roof finally gave way. With the few savings kept since her husband's death, she decided to hire help. No man in town would accept the job. That's when Tonho, the store owner, mentioned in passing, "There's a dark-skinned fellow who appeared around these parts from the Sape Quilombo. Does work for food and small change if you're not afraid." The next morning, Adamar arrived carrying only a worn leather bag and basic tools. Tall, with dark skin marked by the sun, calloused hands and eyes that seemed to carry too many stories for a man barely in his 30s. He spoke little, observed much, accepted the job without haggling, without asking unnecessary questions. 3 weeks for the fence, 2 more for the barn, he said simply, measuring the extent of the work with his eyes. He began in the morning, hammering, sawing, pulling out rusty nails. Jurema watched from the kitchen window, preparing strong coffee and cassava cookies that she left on a plate within his reach. They never exchanged more than a few words of cordiality. The work progressed at a steady pace, as if Adamar had an invisible commitment to time. By the evening of the 4th day, when the sky announced another storm, Jurema noticed something different. Adamar seemed distracted, turning his head repeatedly toward the barn as if hearing something. She quickly closed the windows of the house, leaving only the lamp lit on the porch as a sign that he could take shelter if the rain arrived before he finished. Heavy drops began to fall, and Jurema saw when Adamar, instead of seeking shelter, walked determinedly toward the barn. Her heart raced. No one had entered that barn besides her in the past few months. No one could enter. Cold sweat drops ran down her forehead as she tried to get up from the rocking chair, her heavy body fighting against time and her own fear. The thunder muffled any other sound, but she knew. She knew he had discovered it. When she finally managed to cross the muddy yard, she found the barn door ajar. The smell of wet straw and old wood mixed with another odor, more intimate, more urgent. Adamar stood in the center of the partially dark space, rainwater dripping from his straw hat. His eyes fixed on the farthest corner, where an improvised arrangement of old blankets, crates, and dry straw formed a kind of nest. The weak cry, almost a whimper, revealed what Jurema had tried to hide from the entire town. "There are 2, said Adamar without turning to her. It wasn't a question. In the improvised shelter, 2 newborn babies, still with a wrinkled, reddish appearance, moved uncomfortably with the noise of the storm. Jurema felt her legs weaken, leaning against the wall to keep from falling. The secret she had guarded so carefully was exposed. "They'll take them away," she whispered, tears mixing with the rainwater dripping from the partially destroyed roof. "They've tried to take a child from me before. They won't take these too." The confession escaped like water from a broken dam, without her being able to contain it. Adamar finally turned to face her. His eyes, previously distant, now conveyed something she couldn't name. It wasn't pity nor judgment. It was recognition. Without saying anything, he walked to the babies, adjusted the blankets to protect them from the moisture invading the barn, then took off his own coat and stretched it over the hole in the roof, creating temporary protection. "When?" he simply asked. "The day before yesterday," she replied, still leaning against the wall, her body sore from the recent birth hidden under the loose dress. "Alone?" Jurema just nodded. Without warning, Adamar approached, took her by the arm with surprisingly gentle firmness, and helped her walk to the house. "You need medicine, clean water, and hot food. They need milk." Inside the simple house, he lit the wood stove, heated water, fetched clean sheets from the closet without asking permission. He returned to the barn and brought the two babies, one in each arm, accommodating them close to the warmth. He examined them with the care of someone who had seen newborns before, checking the tiny fingers, the color of the nails, the umbilical cord not yet completely healed. "They're too small," he observed. "They came before their time." Jurema watched, silent, as this man she barely knew cared for the children she had tried to hide from the world. She wanted to ask how he knew what to do, why he was helping her, but exhaustion was greater than curiosity. When the first rays of sunlight came through the window cracks, Jurema woke up startled in the chair where she had fallen asleep. Adamar wasn't in the room. She ran, panicked, to the corner where she had left the babies, only to find them sleeping peacefully. The front door opened, and he entered carrying a cloth bag. "I went to the Quilombo, brought herbs for you, and goat's milk for them." He placed on the table small packages of dried leaves, a bottle with dark liquid, and a gourd with still warm milk. "My grandmother was a midwife. I know how to recognize when a woman has just given birth." Without asking permission, he began preparing a tea with the herbs he had brought. The strong, bitter aroma filled the kitchen, while the rain started again outside. Jurema watched each movement of that man, trying to understand what was happening. "Why are you helping me?" she finally asked, her voice hoarse from speaking so little. Adamar continued stirring the tea for a few moments, as if seeking the right answer in the infusion. "Because no one should give birth alone," he finally replied, handing her the steaming mug. "Drink it all, it will help clean the blood." The bitter liquid went down Jurema's throat, warming her from the inside. A silence laden with unspoken meanings hung between them, interrupted only by the weak cry of one of the babies. With a naturalness that surprised her, Adamar approached the improvised crib, lifted the smaller child, and with a piece of clean cloth soaked in goat's milk, began to feed it. "Do they have names?" he asked, without taking his eyes off the tiny being eagerly sucking on the cloth. Jurema shook her head negatively. "I haven't had the courage yet." The days that followed established an unlikely routine. In the morning, Adamar worked on the fence and the barn roof, hammering, sawing, sweating under the relentless January sun. At noon, he would silently enter the house, check on the twins, help feed them, change dirty cloths for clean ones. In the afternoon, he would resume external work, always alert to any unwanted approach. When someone from town appeared, usually Tonho from the store bringing orders, Adamar would discreetly signal, and Jurema would hide the babies in the back room. No one suspected, or so they thought. On a particularly hot afternoon, while Adamar was finishing fixing the last boards of the fence, a cart stopped at the entrance to the property. Donna Zulmira, the town's official midwife and widow of the former sheriff, known both for her medical knowledge and her sharp tongue, got down with difficulty, leaning on a cane. "Hello there," she shouted, her small, shrewd eyes examining the terrain and stopping on Adamar. "Where is Donna Jurema? I need to talk to her." Before Adamar could respond, Jurema appeared at the door, her face pale, her trembling hands hidden in her apron. "Good afternoon, Donna Zulmira. How can I help you?" The old midwife advanced without waiting for an invitation, her eyes scrutinizing every corner of the yard. "They're saying in town that you've been acting strange, more swollen, more hidden. I came to see if you're not sick." The falsely concerned tone didn't fool anyone. "I'm fine, thank you, just tired with the farm renovation. Jurema strategically positioned herself in front of the door, blocking the passage. And since when do you care about heavy work? You were never one to weed or fix fences. Donna Zulmira stepped forward, her malicious smile revealing yellowed teeth. They say you disappeared for almost a week. Didn't even go to get supplies at Tonho's store. At that moment, a soft cry escaped from the house. The old woman's smile widened, like that of a predator before its prey. What was that I heard? Jurema felt her blood freeze in her veins. Must be the radio. I like to keep it on to drive away the silence. But it was too late. Donna Zulmira was already forcing her way through, pushing Jurema aside with surprising strength for a woman of her age. A radio doesn't cry like that, Donna Jurema. That's the cry of a newborn baby, and as far as I know, you don't have children. Panic took hold of Jurema. It was then that she felt a firm hand on her shoulder. Ademar had approached silently, positioning himself between the two women. Donna. Zulmira, he said in a calm yet firm voice. The fence is almost ready, but I need to finish it before it rains again. Could you come back another day? The old woman looked at him with barely disguised contempt. And who are you to tell me when I can or cannot visit a neighbor? People of your kind don't give orders to people of mine. Ademar didn't back down, maintaining eye contact. I'm not giving orders. I'm asking for respect for someone else's home. The silent confrontation lasted a few seconds until the crying inside the house intensified. Donna Zulmira smiled, victorious. As I suspected, hiding bastards, Donna Jurema. The town will love to know about this. I bet you don't even know who the father is. Before Jurema could respond, the old woman was already moving away toward the cart, muttering, "The Child Welfare Council will want to know about this. Children deserve a real family, not a..." She looked with contempt at Jurema's body. "A woman like you." When the cart disappeared around the bend in the dirt road, Jurema collapsed in tears. "They're going to take my children away, just like they did with Sebastião." Ademar looked at her, surprised by the mention of a name she had never pronounced before. "Who is Sebastião?" Jurema entered the house, checked on the twins who were now sleeping, and sat heavily in the rocking chair. "My first son. He was born before I married Zé Benedito. I was young. I was deceived by a peddler who promised to return. He never appeared." "Again?" Her voice broke with the painful memory. "When my belly started to grow, my mother hid me, but the town found out. Donna Zulmira was young at the time, but already worked with her sheriff husband. They were the ones who took my boy as soon as he was born. They said it was for his own good, that he would go to a decent family in the capital." A solitary tear ran down her marked face. "I never heard from him again. Later, I married Zay, but God didn't give us children. I thought it was punishment." She looked at the sleeping babies. "When I found out I was expecting again, Zay had already passed away. I decided that this time nobody would take my children from me." Ademar listened. In silence, his eyes fixed on the road where Donna Zulmira had departed. "The Child Welfare Council will come," he finally said. "Maybe as early as tomorrow." Jurema hugged her own body as if she could thus protect her children. "And what do? I have nowhere to go." The man remained silent for long moments, his face an impenetrable mask. Then decisively he said, "There is a place, but you need to trust me." During the night, while the babies slept, Ademar explained his plan. He spoke of the Sape Quilombo, a community hidden among the hills, where his ancestors had taken refuge more than a century and a half ago. A place where no one was judged by their body, where fatherless children were not stigmatized, where ancient knowledge was still respected. Donna Teresa, our elder, is a midwife and folk healer. She will know how to take care of you and the little ones, but we have to leave before dawn. Jurema hesitated. Leaving the only home she knew, the land where she had buried her husband, seemed impossible. But when she looked at the twins sleeping, so fragile and dependent on her, she knew she had no choice. "How much time do we have?" Ademar looked at the sky through the window, measuring the stars as one who reads a natural clock. 3 hours. Until the first light, we need to be far away when day breaks. With quick and precise movements, Jurema separated the essentials. Some clothes, the few jewels she had inherited from her mother, her marriage certificate, basic medicines. Meanwhile, Adamar improvised a small covered cart, harnessing the only horse left on the farm. He accommodated the babies in a basket lined with blankets, protecting them from the night dew. The sky was still dotted with stars when they left the property. Jurema looked one last time at the simple house, the newly repaired fence, the still unfinished barn roof. She felt a tightness in her chest, thinking about everything she was leaving behind. But when one of the babies moved in the basket, she turned her eyes forward. The past now mattered less than the future of those two lives that depended on her. The dirt road snaked between hills covered with dense vegetation, moving further and further away from town. The silence of dawn was broken only by the sound of the cartwheels and the horses' hooves. Suddenly, Adamar stopped, raising his hand in warning. On the horizon, still distant but unmistakable, came a lantern light. "They're looking for us," he murmured. The old woman must have spoken before dawn even broke. Without hesitation, he diverted the cart to an almost invisible trail between the trees. "This path is longer, but only those born around here know it." The low branches scratched the improvised cover of the cart, while the horse advanced with difficulty over the irregular terrain. One of the babies began to cry, and Jurema covered its little mouth with her hand, her heart racing. The lantern light passed by the main road, moving away in the opposite direction. They breathed a sigh of relief, but knew they couldn't slow down. "We have to reach the Quilombo before they notice our trail," said Adamar, gently whipping the horse to hurry it. The sun was beginning to tinge the sky pink when they sighted the first cassava field, indicating the proximity of the Quilombo. The Sape Quilombo revealed itself gradually, as if emerging from the hills themselves. There was no fence delimiting the territory, only a carved wooden portal marking the entrance. Small adobe houses with thatched roofs spread organically across the terrain, respecting the natural curves of the relief. In the center, a larger circular construction stood out. "The meeting house," Adamar explained. Children of different ages ran between the houses, stopping curiously to observe the newcomers. Adults interrupted their tasks, approaching with expressions that mixed curiosity and caution. An older man with gray hair and erect posture despite his advanced age stepped forward. "Adamar, we weren't expecting you so soon." His gaze fell on Jurema and the basket with the babies. "I see you didn't come alone." Adamar got down from the cart, approaching the elder respectfully. "So, Josias, this is Jurema. She needs our protection." A few words, he explained the situation. The old man listened attentively, his wise eyes evaluating the exhausted woman and the newborns. When Adamar finished, he nodded affirmatively. "We need to speak with Donna Teresa." As if invoked by the name, a black woman of indefinite age emerged from the larger house. She wore a long printed skirt and white blouse, her hair covered by a colorful turban. She approached with light steps despite her age, radiating a serene authority that made Jurema instinctively straighten her posture. "So you're the woman with the twins," she said, not as a question but as a statement. Without waiting for an answer, she approached the cart and looked at the babies. Her eyes, so dark brown they seemed black, examined every detail of the small bodies. Born before their time but strong, the girl more than the boy. Jurema's eyes widened. She hadn't even realized the sex of the babies herself. So busy was she keeping them alive and hidden. "How do you know?" Donna Teresa smiled, revealing the absence of some teeth. "I see what needs to be seen." She turned to the residents gathering around. "Prepare the guest house. Bring fresh water, herbs, and goat's milk." The people dispersed quickly, each assuming a task. In minutes, Jurema found herself led to a small two-room house, clean and airy, with a fresh straw bed covered by colorful quilts and a rustic but well-crafted wooden cradle. "It was my youngest grandson's," explained Donna Teresa, noticing Jurema's look at the cradle. "Now he's too big for it." She helped accommodate the twins, examining them more closely. The cord was cut by inexperienced hands, she observed, looking at the still unhealed navel of the boy. "But you did the best you could, didn't you?" Jurema nodded, tears escaping. Without her being able to contain them, the relief of finally having help, of no longer being alone, was almost unbearable. I didn't know what to do. I just knew they couldn't take them. Donna Teresa placed her wrinkled hand over hers. Nobody will take your children here, daughter. In Sape, a child is a blessing, no matter how it comes. In the days that followed, Jurema discovered a world, different from anything she had ever experienced. In the Quilombo, work was naturally shared. While she recovered from childbirth, different women took turns caring for the twins, bringing food, washing clothes. The older men carved wooden toys. Children appeared with small gifts: a flower, a colored stone, a bird feather. Adamar had returned to work, repairing roofs, fences, water tanks for the community. He appeared almost daily at Jurema's house, always bringing something: a piece of game meat, fresh fruits, a clay bowl for the baby's bath. He spoke little, as always, but his attentive eyes didn't miss any detail of the children. It was during one of these visits that Jurema finally asked what had intrigued her from the beginning. "Why did you come back to the farm after that first day? Why didn't you report me like anyone else would have?" Adamar remained silent for long moments, his eyes fixed on the open door as if seeing something very distant. "I had a son once," he finally said, his voice almost a whisper. The mother was a girl from town, a landowner's daughter. When her belly began to grow, her father accused me of violence. His eyes hardened with the memory. It was a lie. We loved each other. But who would believe me against the colonel of the region? He took a deep breath before continuing. "I was arrested. When I got out, months later, the baby had already been born and given up for adoption in Belo Horizonte. The girl couldn't bear the separation. She took her own life." Adamar's large, calloused hands trembled slightly. "I searched for my son for years, never found him. That's why when I saw your babies hidden in that barn, I couldn't let it happen again." The confession hung between them like a silent pact. Two hearts marked by the same pain, recognizing each other. The calm of the days in the Quilombo was abruptly interrupted a week after their arrival. Josias, the elder, entered the house without ceremony, his face marked by concern. "They're looking for you. The new sheriff from Bom Jesus and that Dona Zulmira with a paper from the judge." Jurema felt her blood freeze in her veins. "Do they know I'm here?" The old man shook his head. "Not yet. They're asking at neighboring farms, but it's only a matter of time until they arrive." Donna Teresa, who was entering at that moment bringing fresh herbs, intervened. "We have to move up the naming ceremony." She turned to Jurema, explaining, "In the Quilombo, children receive their names in a collective ceremony, presenting them to the ancestors and to the community. It's our way of recognizing them as part of us." "But they haven't even completed a month," protested Jurema. "It doesn't matter. Once named and presented to the Orishas, they will be under the protection of the Quilombo, by law and tradition." Her gaze was firm, determined. "The government recognizes our right to the community's children. Neither judge nor sheriff can interfere." The ceremony was prepared for nightfall. In the center of the Quilombo, the circular house was decorated with palms, flowers, and symbols that Jurema didn't recognize. Percussion instruments were strategically positioned, while large pots bubbled over ground fires. The entire community participated in the preparations. Jurema watched, still unsure of her role in that strange ritual. Donna Teresa approached, bringing two small white tunics. "For the twins," she explained, "and this is for you." She handed her a simple dress, also white, with delicate embroidery on the sleeves and hem. "It's tradition. White represents the beginning." While helping Jurema dress, she explained the ritual. The children would be presented to the four corners, symbolizing the elements. They would receive names chosen by the elders, mixing African tradition with Brazilian. "But you can suggest names if you want," she added, noticing Jurema's apprehension. "They are your children, after all." Jurema hesitated. She had never seriously thought about names, fearing to create bonds that could be brutally broken if they took the babies away. Now, for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future with them. "My grandmother was called Yara, she said timidly. I always liked that name. Donna Teresa smiled. Yara is a good name. A name of water, of feminine strength. She looked at the baby boy, who was sleeping peacefully. And the boy? Jurema thought of her deceased husband, but something prevented her from using his name. These children weren't his, it would be a form of lie. Then she remembered the man who had saved her children, who had risked everything to protect them. Can it be Damião? It's similar to Ademar, but different enough. The elder nodded, approving. Names have power. You chose well. The sound of drums began at sunset. The community gathered in a circle, with Donna Teresa in the center, holding a bowl with fragrant water and herbs. Jurema was led to the inner circle, the twins in her arms, dressed in white tunics that seemed to swallow them, so small were they. Her heart was beating fast, divided between fear of the pursuers and the emotion of the moment. That's when she saw them, at the outer limit of the circle. 3 uniformed men and Donna Zulmira, observing the scene with expressions ranging from anger to incredulity. The new sheriff, a man too young for the position, stepped forward, a paper in his hand. Donna Jurema Silveira, I have a court order to collect the children under your care and take them for evaluation by the Child Welfare Council. A murmur ran through the crowd. The drums fell silent. Donna Teresa rose to her full height, which, despite not being very tall, seemed to grow with the force of her presence. You are interrupting a sacred ceremony, Sheriff. Her voice, normally soft, had acquired a tone of indisputable authority. These children are under the protection of the Sape Quilombo, recognized as traditional territory by the federal government. The sheriff hesitated, looking at the paper in his hands as if seeking some unforeseen guidance in it. Donna Zulmira stepped forward, her face contorted in an expression of malicious triumph. The law is clear. This woman hid a pregnancy, gave birth in secret, didn't register the children. Besides, she has neither moral nor financial conditions to raise 2 babies. Look at her. She pointed to Jurema, who hugged the twins against her chest, visibly trembling. A woman of that age, that size, without a husband. These children deserve a real family. A murmur of indignation ran through the community. Josias, the elder, positioned himself beside Donna Teresa. What we have here is prejudice, not concern for the children's welfare. In the Sape Quilombo, we value a person for what they are, not for the body they inhabit or the possessions they accumulate. The sheriff seemed increasingly uncomfortable. He was new to the region, recently graduated, clearly unprepared for the situation he was facing. The court order, he began, but was interrupted by Donna Teresa. The court order has no validity within Quilombola territory during a religious ritual, you know that. She turned to the residents. We continue the ceremony. The drums resumed, slowly at first, gaining rhythm and intensity. Donna Teresa took the babies from Jurema's trembling arms, raising them toward the sky already dotted with the first stars. Yara, she announced in a strong voice, presenting the girl. Daughter of the waters, of the moon, of feminine mystery. Welcome among us. Her chorus of voices repeated the name, while the elder drew with fragrant water a small mark on the newborn's forehead. Damião, she continued, raising the boy, son of earth, of fire, of the strength that protects. Welcome among us. Again, the chorus responded, like a single powerful voice. The sheriff watched the scene, divided between the duty to fulfill the order and the instinctive respect for what he was witnessing. Donna Zulmira, however, did not share such hesitation. This is a farce, she shouted, advancing toward the center of the circle. These children don't belong to these people. They are Brazilian, Christian. They deserve a decent upbringing. Before she could reach Donna Teresa, a figure emerged from the shadows blocking her path. Ademar, who until then had been discreetly observing from the periphery of the circle, positioned himself as an insurmountable barrier. You will go no further, he said, his voice low but filled with determination. The sheriff stepped forward, his hand instinctively seeking the weapon at his waist. That's when Josias pulled from inside his garments a rolled document, protected by a bamboo tube. "Before you do something you'll regret, Sheriff, I'd like you to read this." He handed over the document with ceremony. It's the definitive title of property of the Sape Quilombo, recognized as traditional territory since 1988, reaffirmed in 2008. Here, our ancestral laws take precedence, as long as they don't violate the Constitution. The young sheriff unrolled the document, his eyes quickly scanning the official text, stamps, and signatures. His expression gradually changed, from skepticism to understanding. "And besides that," continued Josias, pulling out another document, "here is the marriage certificate of Jurema Silveira and Ademar Santos, performed yesterday according to Quilombola tradition and recognized by Brazilian law as a legitimate civil union." Jurema's eyes widened, as surprised as the unwanted visitors. She looked at Ademar, who held her gaze with a mixture of determination and something else she couldn't. Her name, could it be Hope? The document passed from hand to hand until it reached the sheriff, who examined it carefully. "It seems legitimate," he finally admitted. Donna Zulmira snatched the paper from his hands. "This is forgery. A one-day marriage doesn't make these children legitimate." But the sheriff was already retreating, realizing he was on unstable legal ground. "Donna Zulmira, if the marriage is legitimate and recognized, the children are under the legal guardianship of the parents. The court order was issued considering Donna Jurema as a single mother without conditions." He let the sentence die, embarrassed by his own admission of prejudice embedded in the official document. Ademar stepped forward, positioning himself beside Jurema. Without a word, he extended his arms, receiving the twins that Donna Teresa handed to him. The silent gesture contained more eloquence than any speech. It was the living image of a family, unlikely but undeniably real. "The children will be registered tomorrow," affirmed Josias, with the authority of someone who knew exactly their rights. "With the parents' names, as the law requires. You can verify whenever you want." The sheriff folded the court order, putting it in his pocket. "I'll return in a week to verify the conditions," he said, trying to save some dignity. "Make sure everything is according to the law." Donna Zulmira opened her mouth to protest, but the sheriff's decisive look silenced her. With a final look of contempt for Jurema and the babies, she spun on her heels and walked away, followed by the policeman. When the visitors disappeared into the darkness of the road, the tension dissipated. Like mist in the sun, the drums sounded again, more festive. The ceremony transformed into celebration. Jurema, still stunned by the sequence of events, turned to Ademar. "Marriage? When did that happen?" He lowered his eyes, suddenly shy. "It was Sir Josias's idea. He said we needed to anticipate, create legal protection. I signed the papers, but I didn't think that..." He couldn't finish the sentence. Donna Teresa approached, her eyes shining with ancient wisdom. "In the Quilombo, marriage isn't just paper. It's a daily commitment. You don't have to be husband and wife for real if you don't want to. But in the eyes of the law, you are now a family." She looked at the babies in Ademar's arms. "These little ones have the right to a father and a mother. If not for love, let it be for protection." Jurema felt divided between the relief for the security gained and the strangeness of the situation. Married again, to a man she barely knew, even though he had risked everything to protect her and her children. "What happens now?" she asked, more to herself than to the others. It was Ademar who answered, his voice low but firm. "Now you decide. I can leave tomorrow if you want. The marriage gave us what we needed, time and security. The rest is choice." He carefully handed her the babies. "I'll leave you to talk," said Donna Teresa, discreetly moving away. They remained alone in the middle of the celebration that continued around them, as if they existed in a bubble of silence surrounded by music and life. "Why did you do this?" Jurema finally asked. "Why risk so much for someone you barely know?" Ademar looked at the starry sky, as if seeking words among the constellations. "When I found your children in that barn, I saw the chance to do things differently, to not let them take from you what was taken from me." He turned his gaze to her, and for the first time Jurema saw vulnerability in those eyes that were always so controlled. I spent years looking for my son, consumed by guilt for not being able to protect him. Maybe by helping you, I'm also helping that boy I never knew. Jurema felt something break inside her, a barrier, an old protection that was no longer necessary. She approached him, the twins between them like a fragile yet powerful bridge. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." The months that followed were of adaptation and discoveries. Jurema learned the customs of the Quilombo, the traditions that were now part of her children's heritage. Ademar built a larger house for them, with 2 bedrooms and a wide veranda, where the twins, who were growing healthy and strong, could take the morning sun. The marriage on paper slowly gained the contours of reality. There was no great moment of revelation, no dramatic declaration. Just small daily gestures, a hand that lingered longer than necessary when handing an object, a look that persisted a few seconds beyond the usual, a smile that was once rare and now appeared with increasing frequency. One Sunday afternoon, when Yara and Damian were already crawling around the newly built house, Jurema found Ademar carving small wooden toys on the veranda. She watched him for a few moments, admiring the concentration on his face, the surprising delicacy of those large hands manipulating the carving knife. "Ademar," she called softly. He raised his eyes, smiling when he saw her. "Yes?" "This marriage, is it just on paper for you?" The question hung between them, laden with possibilities. Ademar put down the knife and the small wooden horse he was carving. He stood up, approaching her with deliberately slow steps, as if giving her time to retreat if she wanted to. "It was never just paper for me," he finally replied, "but I respected your time, your mourning, your adaptation." He extended his hand, lightly touching her face. "I respect your choices, always." Jurema felt her heart accelerate, not from fear, but from an emotion she hadn't experienced in a long time. "I choose you," she said simply. "I choose this family we built together." The kiss that sealed this promise was soft, shy, like a first step on unknown but promising terrain. 5 years passed. The Sape Quilombo prospered, becoming a reference for cultural resistance in the region. Yara and Damian grew up like all Quilombola children, free, strong, knowledgeable in both ancestral culture and the letters they would learn at the newly inaugurated school in the community. Jurema was no longer the frightened woman who had arrived in an improvised cart. She became a respected counselor, specialist in medicinal herbs, dedicated apprentice to Donna Teresa. Her body, once a source of shame and mockery, was now carried with pride, the body of a mother, of a healer in training, of a loved woman. On a particularly hot January afternoon, exactly 5 years after her arrival at the Quilombo, Jurema was on the veranda, sorting herbs for drying, when she saw Ademar approaching with an indecipherable expression on his face. "I need to show you something," he said, handing her a yellowed envelope. Inside was an official letter and a black and white photograph. In the photo, a young man of approximately 20 smiled shyly at the camera. He had the same eyes as Ademar, the same determined chin. "My son," he explained, his voice breaking. "So Josias and Donna Teresa used their contacts in the capital. They found him." Jurema felt tears in her eyes, sharing her husband's emotion. "Does he know about you?" Ademar nodded, still staring at the photograph. "He's coming to visit us next month. He was raised by a good family, is in medical school." Smile of pride lit up his face. "He said he wants to meet his siblings." This last phrase made Jurema look up, surprised. "Siblings?" Ademar finally faced her, his eyes shining with contained emotion. "Yara and Damian, our children." The simplicity of the statement carried the weight of an entire story, of losses, of encounters, of choices that transformed strangers into family. That night, sitting on the veranda under the starry sky, with Yara and Damian sleeping peacefully in their rooms, Jurema and Ademar contemplated the future with the serenity that only those who have faced great storms can feel. The fence that now delimited their yard wasn't crooked. It was firm, like the love they had built. In the distance, The Quilombo drums sounded, announcing another celebration, another life that was renewing itself in the eternal cycle of births and rebirths. "Nobody chooses the beginning of the story," murmured Adamar, holding Jurema's hand, "but we can choose how to continue it." The next morning, Jurema opened the door to find a gift silently left on the threshold. A small fence carved in hardwood, perfect in every detail, with a simple message engraved on the base: "To protect what matters." It needed no signature. It was their language, the language of gestures, of care, of daily repair that transforms wounds into scars, and scars into marks of honor. Donna Zulmira never returned to the Quilombo. They say she left the town a few years later, defeated not by force but by the persistence of life that insists on flourishing in the most unlikely places. The sheriff, however, became a regular visitor, transformed by the experience, learning that the letter of the law only makes sense when it serves true justice. One afternoon, when Iara and Damio were already 7 years old, an unknown car parked at the entrance to the Quilombo. From it descended a tall young man, urban in appearance, but with unquestionably familiar eyes. He brought a small suitcase and a guitar on his back. Adamar ran to meet him, stopping a few steps away, uncertain. It was Jurema who stepped forward, hugging the newcomer as if she had known him for years. "Welcome to your other home," she said simply. That night, around the fire, 4 generations of intertwined stories met, those of the ancestors told by Donna Teresa, those of Jurema and Adamar, those of a young doctor in training who grew up between 2 worlds, and those still being written in the curious eyes of Iara and Damio. The fence that once separated was now just a memory, replaced by invisible bridges, stronger than any wood, built with the most resistant material that exists, the mutual recognition of the humanity that dwells in each of us. If you were moved by Jurema and Adamar's journey, don't forget to share your impressions in the comments. Your story also deserves to be told. Subscribe to the channel for more narratives that remind us that even